Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, this is Dr. Ken Muich, Stetson Chiropractic Clinic and the Fibromyalgia Wellness Center. I want to thank everybody for joining in. And keep in mind, every one of these has been saved so that if you want to look back at all the different subjects that were covered, just look back on Fibro Wellness Center on Facebook, and you should be able to get all the prior information. This is number 61. In between 60 and 61, actually, I was on radio at KFNX 1100 AM on Friday, and the subject was obviously fibromyalgia. And didn't receive it right away, but over the weekend, apparently, it was held up for whatever reason. But I got up today, and all of a sudden, I had dozens of notifications from people that were interested in my talk and thanking me for not thinking that they're crazy, and to believe in them for their condition of fibromyalgia, and asking for assistance, how they could get more information. So I did send out something to you. Hopefully those people that did get that message, get yourself a piece of paper and pencil or pen. I'm going to give you some information in just a few moments. I'm going to repeat it, though, so that you'll be able to get this down and you'll be able to communicate with me directly. I find that Facebook does have a certain amount of limitations, restrictions, so forth. You don't want to have all your information out in front of public and so forth. But if you email me, I think that would be better, and that way we'll be able to communicate in a much more direct fashion. Everything that you say and so forth will be held in confidence, and I'll be able to help you more directly. There's so many people that are asking for information that, like I say, I will get back to you one way or another just in case you miss this, but by way of Facebook notifications. But in the meantime, I'll give you this information. Here is my email, DC Ken. That's D as in dog, C as in cat, the name Ken. That's my first name, Ken. The number 2000, that's 2000 at C as in cat, S as in Sam.com. Again, it's DC Ken 2000 at CS.com. Please email me and I'll get back in touch as soon as I can. In the meantime, I'm working with patients, so bear with, but I will promise that I will answer each and every one of your responses as soon as I possibly can. For those that want information and so forth, that's why I need a communication with you so I can get it to you. And that way I'll hopefully be able to help you. So the radio program was very, very interesting. She asked me a number of questions, what I would like to talk about. And then she said, okay, she says, I'm just going to, ask you conversation-wise. And so the first thing was the question, what is fibromyalgia? And again, I mentioned it's a cyclic, chronic cyclic illness that affects millions of people, regardless of race, education, sex, age. It doesn't make any difference, regardless of that. And actually, research has pointed to a genetic cellular defect, okay, that you're actually born with. And it's triggered to a greater extent by some physical, emotional, or chemical trauma, like auto accidents, like surgery, like an illness, like emotional stress from, like I said, death in a family, loss of family members, divorce, whatever, a loss of a loved one, or some form of chemical like molds and spores. They can trigger it. Now, that means you were born with fibromyalgia, but many patients that come in, they said, I think I've had it all my life, but the doctor keeps on telling me it's growing pains. And as I mentioned on the radio, the guy says, I'm 40, I don't think I'm growing anymore, which is true. But see, that's the problem that our doctors are having, the allopaths, the MDs and DOs. That's what they're called, allopathic. I'm not making fun of them, okay? And they're trained to diagnose by way of objective tests. And I'm sure most of you had one form or another. That's blood chemistry, urinalysis, CBCs, X-rays, MRIs, CTs, all these different things they send you out for. They get them back and they look at them. And for the fibromyalgia patient, they all come back negative, except for the other conditions that you have. And as I mentioned, every fibromyalgia patient has an additional condition or more, whether it be MS or osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, diabetes, lupus. There's about 15 different ones. And the reason why I mention that is that their symptoms are very, very similar to to fibromyalgia. I'm sorry, my apologies. Very similar to fibromyalgia. And so what we have to do when the patient comes in is we have to differentiate the fibromyalgia from all those other conditions. And that's very, very important because we can help the patient with fibromyalgia, but believe me, we're not going to reverse MS or rheumatoid arthritis or even osteoarthritis itself as far as the various changes that take place in the spine. We can help diabetics in respect that as far as the diet is concerned. We actually do help control certain things. Hi, Nancy. Thank you very much for joining. But the point is that we're not going to reverse a lot of these conditions that you have. We're going to be treating the fibromyalgia. Keep in mind, fibromyalgia makes all these other ones worse, okay, because of symptomatology. So that's why so many of you are going to different doctors. Let's say you have stomach problems, irritable bowel, celiac, whatever else. That's actually part of fibromyalgia, believe it or not, but it's separate from it also. I know it sounds crazy, but fibromyalgia makes those things worse. And so the doctor will give you medicine for that, pharmaceuticals. Let's say you have skin rashes, okay, you go to a dermatologist. Again, those are actual symptoms for fibromyalgia. But again, they're separate from fibromyalgia in itself, and so fibromyalgia makes those worse. So you get medication from that. You go to a neurologist because you have numbness and tingling or burning in the feet and so forth. And so he says, well, it's neurological, so we give you some medications. But those are also symptoms of fibromyalgia. Is this crazy or not? You're losing your hair, okay? That is actually a symptom of fibromyalgia. But you go to, again, dermatologist, it's called alopecia. He gives you medicine for that. So that's why when people come in, they have 8, 10, 12 different medications. Hi, Pamela. 8, 10, 12 different medications spread out all over the place, okay, including opioids. And then if you have too many opioids, then you have to have an anti-constipation medication and so forth and so on. I've gone over that with other talks that I've given you. So that is a real problem that patients have because doctors are not focusing on a large picture. They're looking at what you come in with symptomatology-wise, okay? Because fibromyalgia changes literally from sometimes day to day, week to week, so forth and so on. And so that's the problem with fibromyalgia is that it's not that easy to diagnose because of all the symptomatology, and those symptoms oftentimes relate to other conditions. Historically, it's really a men's disease. If you go back in time, as I mentioned to you, go to biblical times. It was written 2800 BC, or in earliest literature of writings. And Shakespeare wrote about it in Midsummer Night's Dream. All sorts of different things about seasonal changes and how seasonal changes, and you know that, how seasonal changes adversely affect you. And if you have fibromyalgia, you know that. That's why I always say one of the best places to live for fibromyalgia is Arizona. We really only have 2 seasons, tepid and hot. That's about it. But for those of you that have 4 seasons, oh my goodness, I really empathize with you. I really do. And I do believe in you. I believe what you've got. This is not in your head. I first started talking about fibromyalgia. That was my talk. Fibromyalgia, oh really, it's all in your head. That's what doctors used to tell everybody. But anyway, historically, we've learned a lot from fibromyalgia. Historically, if you understand that if you go back to Shakespeare times or even the 1500s, a doctor in Germany might find something, but then another doctor in England finds something, and then maybe somebody in the United States finds something. And so they never were able, you're not Googling things here, okay? They had their own scientific things evolved and so forth. Matter of fact, what was it, 1592, the term rheumatology was actually introduced. How do you like that? 1592. Okay, and that's another thing. Fibromyalgia has had a number of different names, of which one of them is rheumatology. By the way, it's not a rheumatological condition. Rheumatological conditions actually destroy or cause a lot of other different types of conditions, and it's called a collagen disease. Fibromyalgia is not a collagen disease. It's almost like, well, we got this thing, we might as well put it with rheumatologists because they need another condition that they can treat. So they gave them to rheumatologists, but it really is not a rheumatological condition. But if we go in time, history-wise, it's just unbelievable some of the things. They treated men differently than women during this period of time, even though the symptoms were the same. For the men, they would separate them in a separate hospital. They didn't know if they would, something that was like a bug that somebody else could catch or whatever else. And that follows all the way through military history, as a matter of fact. However, for women, they sent them to the sanitarium. Okay, they thought they were crazy, and a lot of doctors treated women just like that. As I mentioned, they did experimental surgical surgeries on the genitalia of females, removing certain organs and so forth. And of course, I mentioned to you on the radio that there were certain doctors that thought that they would remove chronic appendices. There's only one appendix that you have, and yet a lot of doctors were making a lot of money removing multiple appendices. It was experimental surgery. They didn't know what else to call it and do it, so that's what they did. In 1750, it was called fibricula. In 1845, fibrositis. In 1860s, it was called de Castries syndrome, named after a Civil War surgeon. Very, very interesting. Hi, Pamela again, and hi, Carolyn. How are you? I don't know any men who have this. Believe it or not, okay, this is interesting. They've done studies on who has what as far as fibromyalgia is concerned. And they found that about 65 to 70% of all diagnosed fibromyalgia patients are females. And only about 35% were males. However, when they did closer studies, they actually found that it was almost 55-45. There's this ego factor that I talked about with men. Look, if a guy goes to a doctor because the wife says, get in to see the doctor, something's wrong with you. And so the guy goes in, he's achy all over, so forth and so on. He says, I think I got the flu, I got this and that, so forth and so on. Doctor runs all those tests I told you about, and they all come back negative. And he says, yeah, get some more sleep, okay? Goes home, and the wife says, stop drinking beer, get more sleep. You got to go to work tomorrow morning. Get your butt out of here. You got to go to work. Boom. So he trudges on, okay? Women take better care of their body than men. And the misdiagnosis of men is really horrific in that respect. I have probably the same thing, about 60-40, 60% females to 40% males that I have as far as patients is concerned. But it's very interesting. All of a sudden I might get 2, 3, 4 men that come in without any women. But it usually runs about that. And the good Lord only knows how many have been like either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed, whatever. And they're still being given medications for whatever. Yeah, medications out there. And somebody said, well, what about that? Lyrica helps me, or Cymbalta, or Savella, and all the other ones. They help. Yeah, but ours is the only program that actually treats the condition, okay? We know it's genetic. Why do we know it's genetic? Because we followed it through the lifelines of families, great-grandparents, grandparents, children, okay, all the way up and down the line. Now, there may be a few in a family that it bypasses, or it's so low, okay, that they haven't had any physical, emotional, chemical trauma. They're much lower level, okay? They may be achy, sore, but again, growing pains or whatever else, okay? But for the most part, it's the same in everybody. It really is. You're born with it, and it's triggered by some greater amount. Matter of fact, they've done studies on the soldiers coming back, and with PTSD, perfect example of a trigger, okay? 20% of the patients coming back, 20% of the men coming back from Iran, Afghanistan, whatever, have fibromyalgia. They've actually been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So in many respects, maybe they are catching up. But historically, it's very, very interesting and also very, very sad that they used females as experimental animals, so to speak, because they didn't know exactly what it was. In the 1940s, it was still up to World War II. Yes, Carolyn, doctors still think you're crazy and don't believe women, or there are no such thing as fibromyalgia. I know. I'm fighting this. Look, it's again dependent upon the doctor himself, if he is open-minded enough to listen to what you have. Rheumatologists will diagnose you with fibromyalgia. An MD probably will not, or it'll be rare. There may be a few out there. Listen, I'm trying to get the word out along with my MD friend doctor in California to get this out to to all the other doctors, MDs, DOs, naturopaths, so forth and so on, of what we have found over the years, over the decades working with patients. Extremely frustrating, extremely frustrating. Look, once a doctor gets set in his ways and he knows pharmaceuticals have worked in the past, bingo, that's about it. That's all you can do. But our successes have been very, very happy to explain to people. Matter of fact, if you want to go on my website, fibrowellnesscenter.com, fibrowellnesscenter.com, you'll see videos of patients that have gone through the program, and they tell you how they were and how they are now. And we're so very happy and so very, very proud of helping these people. And many of the patients that we've had have been, yes, Morgan Freeman has it, yes, and Lady Gaga also has it. Many of these patients have been pain-free and living a very enjoyable, successful life for decades if they stay on the protocol. Now, what happens when a patient comes in, we introduce them to the protocol, we take a thorough history on this individual. Want to make sure what their history is. That will tell us exactly the beginning of the story, so to speak. From that, then we do an orthopedic neurological examination to verify the fibromyalgia and also differentiate it from the other conditions that patients have. As I mentioned, every patient has other conditions. Fibro makes them worse. Then we go into about 2.5 to 3 week very gentle detox and anti-inflammatory program. Why? Because every one of the patients that come in have been taking so many medications, it really messes up their liver. We have to get the liver cleaned up and the kidneys so that they will function normally, and so you won't have a lot of these secondary side effects. And so we put them on this very gentle detox and an anti-inflammatory. Now, the anti-inflammatory is what's called a restricted hypoglycemic diet. Geez, I hate the word diet. That's all it is. We're taking things out of your diet that are inflammatory for about 2 to 3 weeks. Sugar, gluten, trans fatty acids, and dairy. Now, don't tell me, hey, I can eat all those and it doesn't bother me. Sometimes they're so inset into you don't even realize the problems that you're having. Believe me when I tell you, if you get off these I told you, sugar, gluten, trans fatty acids. Trans fatty acids is anything gives it a shelf life. It's omega-6 trans fatty acids, and it allows food to stay on the shelves for an extended period of time, especially cookies and candies and cakes and all those different things. And any red meat, which is beef and pork, okay? Chicken, fish, shellfish, and turkey, okay. This is not a starvation thing. We're taking garbage out of your system. We're washing it out. We're trying to make sure that when you actually start the last part of the program, that we're not fighting other things that are adversely affecting it. And that's the last part of the program. We place patients on an aqueous substance called guaifenesin, okay? And that pulls the excess garbage out of your system that is blocking you, okay? And the other thing is called mapping. Mapping is where we actually check the body and we actually can see the patient improving by this mapping technique that we've used, again, for decades. It works like a charmer, it really does. So I've simplified matters, I've simplified things, but also added a lot of things that were not on the radio that I think were extremely important, and that they work. It really does. And we believe you. We believe you have fibromyalgia. If you get on this protocol, I'm telling you, chances are extremely good that you're going to be successful, okay? Keep in mind you have to differentiate your other conditions from our protocol. We're working with the fibromyalgia, but as we reduce the fibromyalgia symptoms, a lot of the other symptoms from the other conditions also reduce, and many of them actually drop off completely. So you have to understand what we're trying to do. Now, again, for those people that just got on maybe, I want you to email me. Emailing is a lot easier than Facebook. I have a tendency to worry about other people seeing things that come through Facebook. And so here's my email. D as in dog, C as in cat, Ken, K-E-N, the number 2000, 2000, at C as in cat, S as in Sam.com. Again, D-C Ken 2000 at cs.com. Keep that in mind. You know, it's interesting, Pamela, you mentioned again about Morgan Freeman. I thought I mentioned something to you, everybody over here, and that is I had a part-time actor. It was one of those things where he did a lot of of acting, but he wasn't a star. So if you see a lot of programs on TV, you'd always see him in the background, but he didn't have that many speaking parts. And it was very, very interesting. He came in one day and he saw the fibromyalgia sign and so forth, and he says, I could name for you a whole bunch of actors that have fibromyalgia. And I said, oh, really? He said, but I'm not going to do it, he said. He said, because it would obviously maybe ruin them from getting any further future jobs. He says, and that's the problem. He says, there's a lot of actors out there, actors and actresses, but and now they call them just actors, that have fibromyalgia. But if the directors or producers find out that they do, they cannot guarantee that they'll show up for work. And so that costs them tons of money, and so they can't do it. So you're not alone, okay? It's just kind of like a quiet thing that nobody wants. But Morgan Freeman and Gaga, they let everybody know because, heck, they're making millions of dollars. Doesn't make any difference. Have you heard of the Jesus shot that a doctor is giving for fibro patients have been symptom pain free for 3 to 6 months? It might be you, I don't know. Never heard of it. I'm sorry. Oh, here's another thing. Look, if there's something that you're using, if there's something that you're doing that's working, great. Fantastic. I'm so very happy for you. We know our protocol works with the condition, not the symptoms. Okay? But if you're doing something that you feel very, very comfortable about and you can do a heck of a lot more now than you were able to do before, then continue doing it. I'm not going to tell you stop. That's crazy. That's ridiculous. Okay? You know, just like anything else, I'm sure there are other cures out there. I'll look it up and see what the Jesus shot is. I'll be honest, I do not know. I really do not know. But based upon the doctor I work with, an MD, who has fibromyalgia, and he is a researcher out of UCLA. So he uses UCLA to actually do his studies. And that's how he found the genetic marker. Also, by the fact that if you have great-grandparents have it, grandparents, parents, children, grandchildren, so forth, all the way up and down the line, then it's a genetic thing, okay? And that's why I'm here. Okay, great. So if you want to get in touch with me, email me, please. It'll be a lot more direct, and I'll be able to communicate more readily and get more information out to you. I cannot thank you enough. I'm sorry, I probably went way over. Yes, I did. But this information has to come out in a proper way and fashion. I'm so very, very happy and proud of what we do. And the only thing I can say is that when a patient comes in, we do everything we possibly can to help this patient get back to a state of normalcy, and we're constantly doing it. We're constantly seeing that because we can check and recheck you on so many different levels to find out exactly how you're doing. I can't thank you enough. Thank you so very, very much. Again, use my email. Check fibrowellnesscenter.com. That's my website. I put a lot of information in that, and that's already there. And I can't thank you enough. There's blogs in there, so forth, that are on the website. So email one more time, please. Okay. D as in dog, C as in cat, Ken, K-E-N, the number 2000, 2000, at C as in cat, S as in Sam.com. DC Ken 2000 at cs.com. Thank you so very, very much. Have a wonderful week. Great week. Enjoy. And I will get back to each and every one of the respondents, the notifications that I received. I kept on looking at it saying, well, I was glad to, I had people that I know that I had contacted me, but not such a rush that I received, late. But I'll get back to each and every one of you. Again, thank you so very much for joining. Really appreciate it. Have a great week. Next time, 12:30 next Monday. Look forward to it, right? Fibromyalgia Wellness Center, 12:30 p.m. live video. Thank you, folks. Have a great week. Bye-bye. Bless you all.